Thank you. Thank you. Please. Enough. Welcome to the Seventh Heaven podcast. I am your host, Evan Myers. You can follow me on Twitter at Seventh Heaven. And if you're listening to this podcast, then, well, you found it. But I should let you know that we are on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, now on Rumble, Podbean, and YouTube. Although making this into a video format and uploading it took well over an hour, so we shall see if we stick with that. But hey, you're here. And that's all that matters. It's the only thing that matters, is that you are prisoned to the sound of my voice. And that's the most important thing to me. We got a great show ahead of us today. This is it's very important topics. These are the discussions that America needs to have. Okay. And, I'm just happy to be here. I was in California last week visiting some family. And I didn't mean to stay that long, except my car decided to overheat the morning I was going to leave. And I had to get that fixed up. But while I was there, just anecdotally, people are wearing more masks. There's more masks being worn, it seems like. I went to Luna Grill, which is like a Mediterranean chain. And I made the mistake of not doing like just like an online order, which is what I've been doing, a lot of online ordering, because I find myself wanting to deal with less and less of this crap and just not wanting to partake in it. So it's not unusual for me to just order something or do like a drive-through, because I just don't want to be in a restaurant, particularly right now. Not because of any COVID fears, but just because of the situation I went through. So I was in Luna Grill, and everybody's wearing masks. Everybody. Except for me and this one old guy. But the old guy was not wearing a mask, but it looked like his, either his daughters or granddaughters that he was with, probably between the ages of 7 and 10, the two of them, they're both wearing masks. And this old guy is not. I am not. The irony, of course, is that those two were the least likely to die from COVID. So I find that rather odd that the subgroup that has the highest protection against this disease and doesn't seem to really spread it to adults is being forced to wear masks. Meanwhile, the old guy is just walking around fucking breathing out his mouth. And then my ass is sitting there, no mask. But hey, I've assumed the risk. I think that's sort of the thing that really gets me about all this, is that nobody's adjusted. It seems like everybody's just sort of going with whatever they've decided versus let us look at the information as it happens. So when the pandemic first started, I understood the 2 weeks to flatten the curve because of the supply chain issues that we're now experiencing. But I understood that, hey, we need to make sure that all the hospitals are prepared, that they can have all the equipment they need. I was fine with that. I understood that. But once 2 weeks turned into year and a half, it's pretty obvious that that wasn't what that was about. Or even if it was, then they just decided to move on. So I don't know. It's sort of odd to me because, again, like, we have probably the lowest death rate that we've had. Probably the lowest hospital. I don't know the science of this, guys. All right, just keep this in mind. But it's like, how many more people are dying of this thing? Colin Powell. Colin Powell had blood cancer and also caught COVID. I would argue that that's, once you get blood cancer in your mid-80s, you're on borrowed time. Like, it's over. So, once you've committed multiple war crimes, then you're really on borrowed time. But yeah, it was odd because I'm in this restaurant and everybody's wearing a mask except for me and this old guy with his kids, and I'm like, all right, like, I don't know what are you guys watching here? What is being baked into your are you going to just do this forever? If you're already vaccinated, I don't know why you keep going back to the mask. Unless you just don't have faith in the vaccine. And if that's the case, then why did you rush out and go get it? This is where people need to self-examine. This is where we need to reflect on ourselves. I don't know. It's frustrating to me. So I don't want to go back there anytime soon because it's unpleasant. Like, there are, parts of California is not as crazy as the rest, but the whole fucking state's crazy as it is. It's, where my family is, it is crazy. And we're sitting here acting like, we're a smart scientist. This should prove to people that we are dumb as anybody in history. We always have this delusion about ourselves that we were just like, we're the ultimate progressive part of the evolutionary chain, the cycle. We look at it like, the famous image of the monkey with knuckle dragging, and he slowly gets taller and taller and taller, and finally, standing up straighter and straighter, and he finally reaches, the full man standing and walking. And then that's sort of the end of the picture. But that doesn't take into account for regression. And it also doesn't take account for the fundamental truth that we're stupid. When you have people telling you, and that's the thing. No, the reason why we can do this back and forth is because there's stupid people on, quote unquote, I hate the term, both sides, because the idea that something can be taken into two sides as opposed to, I don't know, a fucking million different ways that it could go. But the whole idea that, the both sides, there's idiots on both sides. Yes, there are. That's the thing. So every time I go on about mask, you're going to have somebody coming at me going, oh, well, what about these idiots who don't get vaccinated and then die or what? It's like, all right, I don't know. All I know is the science hasn't changed about COVID, which is that 99.7% of people who get it survive. I was looking at a chart by age. It broke it down by age. It's like you have to be in your late 80s where it's like kind of scary. Everything. I mean, I was looking at my parents. My parents are in their mid 60s, early 70s. I was looking at, they're like less than 2% of a chance to die. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. So, this is the thing. It doesn't spread in sunlight. We know this. Doesn't spread outdoors. Remember, they mocked Trump for the UV lighting thing. We know that it doesn't spread outdoors. We know that kids are essentially fine. And to my knowledge, they don't even really spread it. And we've seen this in cases. I think there was a case in Florida where there was a school that was doing the full mask lockdown shit, and then there was a school that wasn't. And they had the same results. So this is where, the expression man plans, God laughs. I think this is very applicable. These are by the way, same people who think that the earth is, experiencing major climate change, and that somehow if we all switch to the latest electric vehicle that these companies are pushing, then that'll change things. I don't buy that. So I don't know. It was odd being back, seeing everybody masked up, and like, again, I don't know. Like, if I see a 40-year-old woman who's in great shape with her 2 little kids, and they're all masked up, and I'm going, none of you are going to die. I don't care if you have a fucking, I have a peanut allergy. Like, no, you're fine. I don't know how it is. Like, how is it that people, even if there's all these people. It's like, I know most people I know don't know anybody that died. And then you run into somebody where, like, I had 7 family members die of this. And you're like, what the hell? And then they're like, well, Uncle Bert had a heart attack and he got COVID in the hospital and died. And you're like, well, okay, but the guy had a heart attack. So I don't know. This is the odd situation that we're in, where people are not examining what's actually happening on the ground. And maybe they actually are examining it more than I am, because they're just feeding off the social vibes. They're seeing it going, everyone's masked up, better wear my mask. As opposed to, no, I've done my research, I've made my decision, I've lived my life, and that's that. If you give me new information, that's one thing. There is no new information that has swayed me in any direction. The Delta variant was supposed to, like, destroy everybody, and I don't know, maybe it's worse, but I still haven't seen it, like, on a fundamental level. I don't know anybody that's gotten it and died. And then you're telling me Colin Powell had blood cancer and he had both of his shots and he dies. I'm like, well, that's who the vaccine was supposed to protect. Fundamentally, that's why we did the lockdowns, was to protect the vulnerable. And it didn't work for him. Now, again, the guy was in his mid-80s with blood cancer. I don't know what a vaccine is going to, that's like, you're in deep at that point. Like, life you're being called to the next step. So it's odd. I don't know. I think it's just so odd to me that it's like we're tripling down. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just ego. Fundamentally, maybe this is just everybody has sort of made their decision. They've all gotten in their fights. If you're like my brother who texted my mom, oh, well, we're going to lay low this year. Sorry, I don't think we'll be able to do Christmas. Oh, thanks for the 6-month heads up there, bud. So if it came out, hey, this was like, imagine this. Imagine if it just came out where they full-blown said how do I turn off those notifications? If they said that it was a full-blown conspiracy, which I do believe it was real. I'm not one of these fucking crazy loons. But imagine if they just said, yeah, we invented this. We just were trying to get rid of Trump. Like, imagine if they just said that. This is not real. We've actually just been killing people secretly with other methods. There would be, the people who went along with it would either find a way to ignore that, or they would pretend like, oh, okay, and then just move on and forget that they were screaming down their family members and in hiding for the past 2 years and all that. So that's what it is. This is now we have ventured into the ego. This is no longer about the science, not that it ever was, but this is about ego, fundamentally. This is why people are holding on to the mask, I think. Because, again, I think the best study shows that they're 15% effective in keeping the virus out. I mean, that's pretty low, 15%. You would have a better, if we said, hey, how about this? Let's move all of our shopping outdoors. Let's do outdoor markets. That would be more effective than everybody wear a mask. Right? If we all had like a farmer's market style shopping, if we said, hey, we don't want to have mass, no more packed rooms, packed buildings. The effective thing would be let's move outside. But again, this is not about effectiveness. If it was about effectiveness, they would have quarantined the sick and let the rest of us live our lives, especially if you're working, and we wouldn't have all these supply chain issues. So, but again, this is not about that. It's no longer about science or reason or logic even. It's just about ego at this point. I didn't mean to talk about California and all that shit for the 16 and a half minutes there. So I'll move along here. And that's why I didn't have an episode last week, because I meant to do it, but then I ended up staying longer than I intended, and I don't have a studio there really to work with. But anywho, on the most interesting topic. So Dave Chappelle, for those of you who don't know, had his new special released. He has a bunch of specials with Netflix, I think 3 or 4, something like that. They paid him some ungodly amount of money to do it, and so good for him. And if you watched it, it was good. I liked it, and then I liked it less as I thought about it. So on Letterboxd, which if you guys should go on there if you like movies and reviews and all that, I think I gave it 4 stars out of 5 at first, and then I bumped it down to 3.5. My only real knock on it is that it's very, it feels like a sermon, it feels like a TED Talk. But I've never been a big Chapelle guy. I grew up, my buddies would watch the Chapelle show, and I would laugh, but sometimes I'm like, I'm not big on the racial humor like that, where it's less humor and more racial. It's more of a statement, more of a comment, really. And I don't know. It's odd that this is. It's like, it's funny if so. Let me lay the groundwork here. So Chapelle has had sort of a back and forth in his specials with the gay LGBTQRS community, and he's in this one it was very centered around the trans issue, and in his point was basically that his central thesis is that Black America is actively being oppressed in America by white Americans. And that's been the focal point of his comedy for his entire career, as far as I've watched him. Obviously, I don't know all of what he's done, but I've watched the show, seen many or if not all of his specials, and his focal point is that we live in a society that oppresses Black Americans actively, and it's white Americans that are perpetuating it. And that's the thing. There's a lot of room for debate in that discussion. There's a lot more room for debate than people think. You can talk a lot about all sorts of different facets of those kinds of discussions. There's just different ways, and I'm not going to do that because I'm not interested in that discussion, because I kind of feel like either you think one way or you don't. And all of this shit has not changed my mind about the racial stuff in this country. So you're just not going to change my mind. And I'm probably not going to change yours. But Chapelle is always sort of focused on that. And, one of his points that he made was that, black Americans have been trying to free themselves for 400 years. And, these white transgenders just cut in line, basically. This isn't an old argument. I had when I was in college, I was having lunch in the cafeteria, and this African-American gentleman offered to sit down next to me. I said, that's fine. Then he decided to talk to me, which was less fine, but sure, fine. And, he was trying to explain to me that he didn't like that these Mexicans and Asians and whatever other minority groups were jumping on this bandwagon, because in his mind, no one in this country had been oppressed like the black American. And maybe he gave the Native Americans a caveat there. And he is correct. He's fundamentally correct that, if you were to do a rank choice based on race, Native Americans and black Americans had it rough. But I would argue that almost everybody back then had it rougher than everybody now, just in general. You would die of things like yellow fever. I don't even know what the fuck that is. Or is it scarlet fever? Both. Like, we live in a country now where the poor are morbidly obese. That's how you know when somebody's like poor, is that they're overweight. And that the rich are all fucking look like they're all ripped and trimmed, and they look like they've been working in the fields all day. Thank you. So it's sort of strange to me when people... I don't like that discussion, because I think a guy like Dave Chappelle has had a very good life, regardless of his views. I think America has treated him very well, despite the fact that he's... I don't know if that goes both ways. Although he pays taxes, so whatever. But I think he's a guy that, I think the racist, white supremacist America has done a great job providing for Dave Chappelle. And he's earned it. He's worked his ass off, and he's funny. So I don't begrudge a man for that. I admire him for it, in fact. But I just have a little bit of a dispute with that narrative. And so when you get into this ranking, the natives had land stolen from them, and they had these deals, and then there were blankets with smallpox and blah, blah, blah. And then you go, the Japanese Americans were interned. They had their property stolen. They were, forced into these camps for the duration of war. They were essentially falsely accused of being traitors. And, so you could go down the line. Latino America, Mexican Americans have been largely exploited for the working of, farms and migrants and blah, blah. You could just go on and on and on. Everybody has a beef. And that's the thing. The Irish have a beef. The Italians have a beef. The Jews have a beef. Everybody has a beef. And in large part, most of them have found success in this country, if over time. We look at the black American society and we go, it's so terrible. And it's like, you're thinking, yeah, maybe in the south side of Chicago, sure, that's garbage. And Baltimore, all the big cities run by Democrats are terrible. Yes, you got me there. But when you also live in a world where, Colin Kaepernick gets a Nike deal and he's not even playing, Jay-Z's like, I think Jay-Z's a billionaire or close to it. Dr. Dre's a billionaire. You know, Kobe Bryant might have raped a woman, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. I don't care. No one who likes basketball cares. So I don't like, this is the thing, whenever you start going into the weeds of it, it's like, well, even then, it's like, there is success and drastic success, because back, you know, before desegregation, and even, you know, before the Civil Rights Act, Jim Crow, all that stuff. I mean, there was not many of this. That doesn't make any sense. There wasn't a lot of black billionaires or black multimillionaires. There were, they did exist. So let's be very clear. This whole, again, I mean, I believe it was Chapelle who was in his special talking about a black slave owner. And he sort of goes, oh, well, he's just trying to keep up with the whites. And it's like, no, he wanted free labor. It's not keeping up with anybody. It's a fact of market. It's the market. Look at our society now. I have a brand new iPhone. It's the SE. It's not the fucking 2011, whatever the hell it is. I don't know. iPhone 11. I'm such a boomer. But, so the new iPhone 11, you know, is $1,000, and it has more technological capabilities than the fucking ship we sent to the moon back in the 70s or whatever. So it's crazy. So my SE was like $400 for a phone that has precious minerals in it, that has the capability to stream HD and everything, you know, just all these things, and it's in my pocket. It's more powerful than the computer I had when I was a kid, doing my homework on it. I mean, that's insane. I mean, my old laptop is shittier. The laptop I used all through college, and you know, whatnot. My last phone was better than that. So this is what I mean. We don't see, it's funny, we miss the forest for the trees, you know? It's like we don't see the progress in front of us. We always just kind of focus on what's not working. And that's why I was wondering why the hell I brought my phone up. Well, the reason why my phone's cheap is because it was probably made with very underpaid Chinese or Sri Lankan or Honduran or whatever workers who are getting paid dog shit and probably in unsafe conditions. And then that's the funny thing, is the next step from that. So that's it. We went from slavery, where you got zero pay. Or if you did, I mean, some of them were paid, but it was very minuscule. You know, if you work for me long enough, eventually you can buy your freedom back. You know, that's something, right? And then now it's like, well, we can't do that anymore, but we can do it overseas, where Americans won't care as long as they get their iPhone. Okay. The next progression of that is AI, which will replace all these workers, and then we're going to figure out what the hell do we do with all these people who don't have jobs. And that's the balance. So that's the thing. Do I begrudge iPhone for getting their labor in Sri Lanka or whatever? No. In the same way, like if you're a black plantation owner in the 1830s or whatever, do I begrudge him for owning slaves? No. And Chapelle makes it about whites, and it's always about the whites for him, you know? And I'm like, man, is it that, or is it just a fundamental truth of human nature and capital? So I don't know. But yeah, so his whole thesis was essentially that the trans community has cut in front of the line, and that they're misconstruing what he's saying, and that they don't know him. And they're right. He's right, I should say, not they. I didn't mean to misgender Dave. I think he goes by he, him. But Dave, he was right. It's true that, Black America has been having to make their case for what they believe. That it's, again, like, this is dumb. Like, every black person is out there making a case. Like, they're all out there going, well, this is what I think, and this is what I'm going to do. It's like, all right, guys, come on. Nobody's doing that. But, yeah, he's right. He's right in the sense. His problem is he's making it about white people. And, again, this is where I kind of didn't care for it, because I'm going, man, like, and I knew, like, the people defending Dave Chappelle are all white conservatives who support the police. It's all these, like, it's like Ben Shapiro is defending Dave Chappelle. And so in his mind, he's making it about white America. And it's like, well, maybe your problem is that you have, you're beholden to the Democratic Party that doesn't want you to venture away from the old plantation. This is fun. You have to start looking at it like this. When Twitter dogpiles on a black person that expresses, like Nicki Minaj says, I don't really, everybody, look up, do your research on the vaccine, and then they just completely come out against her. And before we get into that, let me just kind of finish what I was going to say about Dave on this. The other problem I had, he kind of, there wasn't a lot of jokes in his special, and that's something that I find important in comedy. It's what I loved about Norm Macdonald. It's what I love about Mark Normand. Is these guys, they really are fundamentally about the joke. And Chappelle's seems like he's more about the message. And there was a lot of clapping. And clapping is not laughter. So that's kind of, if I'm going to criticize Bill Maher for that, which I have, and again, I actually like Bill Maher generally, in a general sense. As a comic, I like him. Not as a news person, and probably not as a human being, but as a comic, I do like him. But Chappelle, I believe that it's about laughing. And then he had a whole joke about Mike Pence being secretly gay, which is funny to me because it's a total boomer joke that I've been seeing I saw on Twitter for literally the last 6 years that, oh, Mike Pence is secretly gay. And it's always funny to me when the people like Dave is a woke guy. He's a full-blown progressive. Like, he's all on board with all of this. He just has this he's having a fight with the trans. But he's a social liberal. He supports, as far as I know, he's supportive of big government programs and all that stuff, reparations. He wants all of that. And then, and oh yeah, man, I'm down with the cause. And then, oh, what's wrong with Mike Pence? He's a fucking queer. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's, how progressive are you that you're still using gay as an insult, Like, it's so hacky. It's such a hacky boomer joke. Oh, who's really gay? That fucking conservative. Ha ha ha. Isn't it so gay of him? He probably likes sucking dick. And it's just like, God, yeah. Mike Pence is the closeted queer. There you go, man. You got him. Great fucking joke. And so it's like, that's, he had some great lines, like don't abort the baby. I did laugh at that. And he has great delivery, He's phenomenal. He's a master of it. And that's why I gave it a 4 stars initially, but he, I realized, I'm like, man, I wasn't doing a lot of laughing, And I think that's essential to a comedy special. So I'll close that actual discussion here. I'll read my Letterboxd review of this, which you can find me at a Phillips Seymour Potman on this website. And so I was scrolling through the reviews, and it's like there's either 5 stars or 1 star, and it's neither. It's not a 5-star special. Bo Burnham's was funnier, and that one gave me nothing but anxiety. But that was a funnier special. So Chapelle, I have a higher expectation of him because he is a true stand-up, and then he's out here preaching. I'm like, great. He's kind of doing the same. But that's the thing, he's kind of always been that guy. So that's why I've never been a big Chapelle guy per se. I would love to see him sometime. I'd probably laugh a lot in it. I'd probably laugh more in that than I would just watching it on Netflix, because when you're in a room, it's different. But it's hard for me when I watch a thing like that where I'm like, okay, you're just kind of preaching. But I was on Letterboxd, and all the reviews were just like 1 star or 5 stars, and it's neither. But the 1 star people were basically going, "Oh my God, it's killing the trans." They do this thing where they have to where the words is violence thing, where you don't actually have a thing, and you don't like what I'm saying, but rather than addressing it, you then just say that my words are causing trans to die. And if that were true, then everybody in history is going down. I mean, you can go through every comic that was laying into evangelical Christians for decades, and go, okay, well, you're killing them. Your comedy is killing them. I mean, this is the thing. You can do this for everything and everybody. So I don't know why people bother. But the left does this thing where everything is killing us, but also we're just, and then they try to downplay it. We just want to live in a slightly better world. I keep seeing this meme where it's like, the one guy's like, "Oh, you're a socialist. You're a piece of shit communist," and like the right winger who's just all raging. And then the left winger is just like me, just trying to make the world a slightly better place. So I'm like, slightly? I mean, you guys, you're calling for fundamental change of capital. You want to get rid of capitalism. You want to have massive government programs that take up, cover health insurance, cover parental leave, that cover you want all these big government programs. And you're just like, we're just trying to make the world slightly better. And I'm like, if that's all that does, then we shouldn't do it. If all you're going to do is slightly improve things, then like, what are we doing? What's the goal here? You're admitting to me that that's the thing. It's the downplaying of the radical. That's why they went from defund the police, which actually means something, to, well, we mean that we just want to spend more on schools. No. I mean, maybe, but that doesn't, if you say defund the police, you're saying get rid of the police. And by the way, that's a message I actually would understand. That's a message that we can discuss, but just to go, well, we just want to decrease their funding and increase it for other things. It's like, fuck no. Because this is the point. If you actually wanted to change things, you would end state power. The root of all of our problems is that the state has power. Are you mad that cops can kill Black Americans indiscriminately? Maybe the problem is that the government uses cops to do these things. Cops are used to enforce laws. Cops are used to effectively collect taxes on the citizenry as well, with a gun. and a badge. That symbolizes power because it is power. They have power. If you wanted to change that, you would take away their power and you wouldn't give more power to other aspects of the same white supremacist government, assuming you actually believe that. But they don't. Which fundamentally is about, really, I think it's less about actual change and just more about electoral change, which is why you haven't seen any racial riots under Joe Biden's presidency, but they will certainly show back up when a Republican is back in the White House. And, yeah, it'll come back, or probably during the midterms or something. I don't know. But again, that's if you wanted to fundamentally change or maybe voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is only slightly changing the country. Maybe that's the truth. Maybe they only want to slightly. Maybe they don't realize that most of what they're calling for would not slightly change the country; it would massively change the country. But since they think they're only slightly going to change the country, that's why they voted for Dementia Joe and Officer Kamala, a cop. This woman prosecuted drug offenders for decades, and they voted for her. So, yeah, maybe they only wanted to slightly change things. I don't know. But anywho, what I was trying to say, heading back in, I had a transition earlier, and I totally blew it. Dave Chappelle and is a great example of what happens when a black man leaves the plantation of the Democrat Party. And you probably don't like hearing that if you're in any way woke because I'm a cisgender white man. How dare he say that? Well, I don't know what else to say. Since we love hyperbolic language in this country now, and since trans people are literally dying because of Chappelle's comedy, surely the Democrats are mad that Chappelle is literally leaving the plantation. And we saw an example of this. This happens every time, like I was saying earlier, with Nicki Minaj, and you see this with Kyrie Irving, and you see this with all these guys where, they've gone off the, we'll say reservation this time. Oh, shit. That might be worse. But this is what happens when they jump off the plantation. Condoleezza Rice is another example of this week. She was on The View, and let me just play for you what she said.
The whole issue of critical race theory and what is and is not being taught. I come out of an academic institution, and this is something that academics debate, what is the role of race and so forth. And let me be very clear. I grew up in segregated Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't go to a movie theater or to a restaurant with my parents. I went to segregated schools till we moved to Denver. My parents never thought I was going to grow up in a world without prejudice, but they also told me that's somebody else's problem, not yours. You're going to overcome it, and you are going to be anything you want to be. And that's the message that I think we ought to be sending to kids. One of the worries that I have about the way that we're talking about race is that it either seems so big that somehow white people now have to feel guilty for everything that happened in the past. I don't think that's very productive. Or black people have to feel disempowered by race. I would like black kids to be completely empowered, to know that they are beautiful in their blackness, but in order to do that, I don't have to make white kids feel bad for being white. So somehow this is a conversation that has gone in the wrong direction.
I mean, this is one of the most successful individuals. Whatever you think of her politics, which I'm not a fan of, Condoleezza Rice's politics in general. We probably agree on a lot of things, but there's a lot of fundamental disagreements, especially relates to foreign policy, war crimes, things like that. But she's a very successful individual in this country, and she grew up in segregated Jim Crow, Birmingham, Alabama. I have heard another story from her where, she, back then they had two water fountains, one for whites and one for coloreds. By the way, these were not as a result of the private market. This was a result of state power. the state required businesses and schools to do this. So again, is the problem the people or is the problem the power? But anyways, Condoleezza Rice is somebody that most people would say, in not in a moral sense, but in a literal sense, she's a great American. She has climbed, in the same way that a Supreme Court justice is a great American, or captain of his industry or her industry is a great American. Condoleezza Rice came from the Jim Crow South in segregation, where there were 2 sets of water fountains and 2 sets of bathrooms. And her parents said, if you need water, come home and drink water. If you need to go to the bathroom, come home and go to the bathroom. Don't use that. So she had to actually live with this on a practical level, unlike most people who seem to be lamenting the ways of the world right now from the comfort of their lazy boy. And by the way, if you've ever been in Birmingham, Alabama, it's fucking hot. So if I needed to get water, come home and get water, that's quite, that's a cost. There's a cost there, a literal cost. So she said that on The View, and I thought, the 2 fundamental points is that that she brought up was that it makes, like we're punishing white children for this, or we're telling black people that there's no hope. And that's kind of my problem with all of this, is that, and this is what all my fucking friends get real quiet when I start saying this. But that's kind of been an issue with the black community, is I think there are bad actors. I will say Jesse Jackson is one of those. Al Sharpton is one of those. Sean King is one of those. We'll get into it, but Touré is one of those, where they are promoting, many rappers too, where they're promoting this narrative that the world, Jay-Z would complain about being black in America, and he's a billionaire. And then when he got into his deal with the NFL, he was like, yeah, I think the Kaepernick thing sort of sorted it out. I think they kind of, the kneeling, I think they made their point. We should probably just move on. What? This guy had a line where he said, $500,000 for bail because I'm African. And now he's a billionaire and he's telling Kaepernick to shut up. I mean, this is my point. They tell people you have no hope, while their own life is proof that that is not true. And I think that's a shitty message to tell an entire race of people. So if my white privilege is that I don't have to go through that really, then yeah, I guess I have white privilege. I don't have to deal with some asshole telling me what I'm supposed to think and do because I'm white. I mean, now we do, but I ignore them because fuck them. They're stupid. So speaking of stupid, Touré, I think he used to be an MSNBC guy. The guy's a fucking moron. He wrote this opinion piece. I'm looking at it here in Yahoo News. And this is the title: Condoleezza Rice, critical race theory stance, proves she's a foot soldier for white supremacy. Oh! This is what I love. This is the shit I live for. That we get to tell. This is, again, highly accomplished woman. Highly accomplished woman. And Touré is going to make it where she's a foot soldier. That's a little demeaning, don't you think? Considering she's literally sent people to war. Literally sent people to war. But she's just a foot soldier here. So he writes, Condoleezza Rice's recent appearance on The View was offensive and disgusting for many reasons, but she was who we thought she was, a soldier for white supremacy. Her thoughts on critical race theory are completely white-centric, as in they revolve around the thoughts and needs of white people. Okay. I don't think that's the case, because you ignored that portion where she said, we're creating it's too big. It's too big, and you're basically telling black people that there's no hope. You're ignoring that part, so that's not white-centric. So you're wrong, Touré. You're wrong. On to the next paragraph. Her primary argument against critical race theory is that the history should not be taught in a way that makes white kids feel bad. What? We should whitewash U.S. history to protect the feelings of white children? Excuse me, I misspoke. We should whitewash U.S. history even more than we already do in order to protect the feelings of white children. Okay, I love how I fucking love this leap that he makes. It's about white people and then it becomes about white children. Do you see that little leap that he just made? The last sentence of his first paragraph, her thoughts on critical race theory are completely white-centric, as in they revolve around the thoughts and needs of white people. And then it's, history should not be taught in a way that makes white kids feel bad. What? We should whitewash U.S. history, protect the feelings of white children? Now he's talking about kids. Isn't that interesting? And by the way, what is the... why is it always being framed as protecting the feelings? Is this about feelings or is this about propaganda? If I were to become a governor of a state and appoint some radical right-wing Christian to the Secretary of Education position, and our entire school system was forced into reading the Bible, and we just got rid of everything else. We just said, we're reading the Bible. Every school is now theology. Would the issue be that, you're hurting the feelings of students? You're hurting the feeling. No. The issue would be that I was propagandizing these kids using state power into an ideology. If you don't understand the problem with that, I can't help you. And I love it because he wants to punish white children. Do you see that? Touré is a 50-year-old man, and he's going, oh, we're trying to protect the feelings of white kids? Huh. This is like, I don't know, is this a pedophile? Like, this is an insane person. You have to be insane to think this way. And they keep giving him fucking posts. They give him a job. Okay. On to the next paragraph. First of all, what about the feelings of black children? Again, Condoleezza Rice explicitly, directly said exactly what she thought about that. What about the feelings of black children? Yeah, what about them? What do you think you're doing when you tell them, hey, this whole system's rigged against you? You cannot trust the police. You cannot trust your teachers. The history books are filled with lies. And, by the way, people will treat you differently. You'll never get a good job, and you'll never get promoted. And what does that do to black children? What does that do to their feelings? Is that empowering? I don't think so. And by the way, again, this is the thing. He also does the claim that, it's about whitewashing history. Critical race theory is not even about history. Critical race theory is an ideology that allows you to sort people into class. It's an application into history. It's not history. It is not a type of history. It is an ideology you could put it onto math, you could put it onto English, you could put it onto any science, you could put it onto any single subject you want. You can put it into your relationships. If you date, I'm dating a black girl. Well, what does that mean? Oh my God, now it's a power dynamic, and then there's racial history here. So it's not critical race theory is not history. It is not a subject. It is an ideology. So, yeah. So he says, first of all, what about the feelings of black children? What would their feelings be if they knew they were being taught a version of American history that was distorted to protect white kids? I love that. What message does that send to them? And what about the feelings they have when learning about the real American history? Again, he has not addressed anything that Condoleezza Rice has actually said in this yet. He has not quoted her once. He is merely commentating on her and what she did. He has not quoted her once. So she answered all of this. He goes, also this, white children and adults should absolutely feel bad about the past atrocities committed by white Americans. What? They should feel guilty. They should cringe at what their ancestors did. They should also understand that modern white power is directly related to these atrocities. White people gained economic and institutional advantages from slavery and segregation and the long-term subjugation of black people that continue to help them to this day. That is disputable. Again, white people have gained this. Black people have gained this. Jay-Z's doing fine. Beyonce's doing fine. Every NFL player, every NBA player is doing fine. Dave Chappelle's doing fine. Larry Elder's doing fine. You can do, like, the notion that this is where there is people who, there are probably families that have benefited from slavery. They aren't living in the South. That's what happened in Reconstruction, was that the South was absolutely decimated by the economic and social cost of the Civil War. The entire war took place in the South. It did not take place in the North. So their infrastructure was, it's like Europe after World War II. Their infrastructure was destroyed. They lost countless men of working age, generations of people lost. And you can argue rightfully so, and I'm not going to argue hard against that, but the Emancipation Proclamation took away their labor in a rural society. The notion that there were just these people who benefited from slavery, I don't buy that. Maybe Northerners who came in and bought up all the land, the carpetbaggers, or maybe Northerners who traded with Southern companies, Southern plantations, and then, just after the war found another way to make a buck, and they didn't get their entire business bombed or cannonballed or whatever. I mean, maybe they benefited, but it's always like, this is the narrative that people like, the aristocrats of the South just stayed aristocrats after the war. No. I'm sure there are some examples of people who did, but by and large, they were decimated. So this is the crap that they do. And again, he goes, white children and adults should absolutely feel bad about the past atrocities committed by white Americans. No, they should not. No, they should not. No one should feel, first off, he says they should feel guilty. Guilty is for people who commit a crime. Guilty is for someone, if you hurt somebody that you care about, or even if you don't care about them, but if you hurt somebody, you should feel guilty. If you steal, rape, murder, whatever, if you do something that harms somebody, you should feel guilty. If your ancestors from 150 years ago might have done something that you're not, like, how do you even know that they did something? Then no, you should not feel bad. And by the way, there are more people who have immigrated to the United States since than that were born here. My ancestors go all the way back to the 1500s on this continent. I think I'm probably one of the exceptions. Most people I know, their families came around the turn of the century after slavery. Most Italians, have no connection to the institution of slavery in the United States. Italy, I don't know. Probably because Rome had a lot of slaves. there's probably, I mean, this notion that, oh, like you're all the whites benefited from this while all the blacks were subjugated. This is racist and stupid, which is the problem with racism, is that it's stupid. It's stupid thinking. The moment, and this is why everybody goes, oh, like you have, if you say something, it's like, you're racist. It's like, no. Racism is a very specific thing. If you're a white supremacist, it's because you believe white people are supreme. That is stupid. That is a fundamentally stupid thought. First off, we sunburn. That is not a evolutionary benefit. I stopped growing in high school. Is that a benefit? People have different metabolisms. This notion that everybody has gained, all white people are the same. No, we're not. In this, I mean, it's like this, people do this. It's dumb. It's like we go, oh, off in Africa. Oh, that continent with like 120 countries and like 15,000 different languages. Yeah, Africa. Like, holy shit, there's a whole world there. There's a whole world there. And it's like, oh, off in Africa. You know how those Chinese are. Like, they're just this giant monolithic group of people all walking in sync together. I mean, this is how Touré is a racist. This is what modern racism actually looks like. You want to talk about what racism looks like? This is it. He goes on to say, white people should know that American history is rated X, and their relatives are the ones who black people had to fear. Again, I don't know, like, do the Italians... Here we go. They didn't arrive and have a nice dinner with the natives and buy Manhattan for a few trinkets. Well, I believe they did buy Manhattan for a few trinkets. I don't even know what the fuck that means. They didn't arrive and have a nice dinner with the natives and buy Manhattan for the few trinkets. Is he talking about black people? He goes, okay, the Europeans who settled early America made treaties with American Indians and then violated those treaties and slaughtered the natives as rapidly as possible. They didn't merely own slaves and treat them kindly. First up, I love this. This is a concept that people use to justify slavery in the rest of the world, is that somehow America was uniquely cruel over slaves. I've heard this about the Bible too, where they go, oh, well, yeah, they had slaves in the Old Testament, but it was like they were part of the family. I mean, okay. Yeah, they were part of the family. This is the shit that people, this is like a third grade understanding of people. So he goes, they didn't merely own slaves and treat. By the way, the thought of owning a human being, like you own a person is your property, is that alone is the problem. That should be the notion that there's like, oh, well, there's good ways to own people. There's a better way to own a person. We feed her. I'm probably going to rape her, but her kids are going to get paid to go to college. I'm going to put the kids we have together, I will put through college. I mean, like, what? This is insane. He says they didn't merely own slaves and treat them kindly. They had a cruel and peculiar institution that kidnapped and human trafficked and then beat and raped and subjugated humans for generations. I don't know how this is. They do this today. Remember when Michelle Obama was doing hashtag free our girls, which, by the way, whatever, because a bunch of Muslim fucking terrorists went through some village or some school and they kidnapped all the girls and sold them into sex slavery. This was like 7 years ago. What is like, so what? I don't know this. So this logic, again, this logic that American slavery, which we ended in the 1860s And we fought a war over. I mean, it cost hundreds of thousands of American lives to end the institution of slavery, which no other country has ever had to go through in history. Not one. And so if you're sitting here going, oh, well, it was different. Well, what about Boko Haram? Like, I don't know. Why is it that with the Muslim slave trade in North Africa that's taking place right now, why is that better? I don't get that. Well, that means this person's just a liar. So he says they had a cruel and peculiar. I love it, peculiar. It's cruel and odd. It's strange. Institution that kidnapped and human trafficked and then beat and raped and subjugated humans for generations. Yes, slavery was wrong. Slavery is wrong because it actively takes place and it's still wrong. Same people think that the border should be open and have zero concern about the sex trafficking that takes place there right now. They don't care that most females who illegally immigrate to the United States take birth control because they assume they're going to get raped. They've put that into the bill. They're baking that into their travel plans. Well, I'm going to go to the United States, probably going to get raped by some coyote, so I'll take some birth control so that way I don't get pregnant. Cool. What? And that's today. That's happening today. That could be happening right now as I'm talking. And this loser probably thinks we should not have built a wall and we should not deter people from traveling here illegally. Slavery, he goes on to write, slavery was far more cruel and frightening than most people even know, unless you read the diaries written by former slaves. And the past is not done with us. Slavery created the economy and the wealth that led to America becoming a global superpower. You didn't have to own slaves in order to participate in the wealth building, but all the wealth derived from it went to white people and was thus stolen but from black people. That is not, well, it's true in the fact that they stole their labor. It's not true in that it all went to the white people because we know that there were black slave owners. We know this. We know there were Native American slave owners. So again, this is like a third grade understanding. By the way, the thought of how we don't even understand how bad it is unless you read the diaries written by former slaves. Okay, Frederick Douglass is part of every fucking curriculum, and he talks about this. He wrote 3 autobiographies, for God's sakes. He was the Obama of his generation. By that, I mean a blowhard. Just kidding. Well, kind of. So to make it about, and then, of course, he's got a picture of a statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest, which I believe they've since torn down in Memphis. And it's just, oh, there's a statue. Again, this is what you do when you go, I want to vote for someone who looks like me. What? What? You want to vote for someone who looks like you? I heard somebody say that earlier. They were talking about some girls like, oh, well, I like that because I kind of have that. And I go, you like the things that you, what? Huh? You like a girl because she reflects you? That's weird. That's kind of gay, if you ask me. Sorry, I meant to do a...
Fucking thing sucks!
Thank you, Bill. Bill's always good. I love a good Bill. So yeah, again, this notion that it all went to the whites and thus was stolen from black people, that's not true. The triangle trade had 3 actors, Europe, North America, and Africa. Slavery benefited African nations. They sold the Americas slaves. So all the wealth did not go to the whites. It was used to perpetuate the slave trade. Goes on to say, American history is a series of cycles where white people grow more powerful because of legalized oppression of black people. Okay, that's something. American history is a series of stories where white people knock us down. Again, this is a guy who writes for a living. This is a TV personality. Who are you talking about? Who's us, dude? Let me see where this motherfucker went to school. Let's see who's been knocked down. I went to community college, and then I went to Ole Miss, which you need a 2.5 GPA to get into. And so, all right. And then when I got out of college, I worked for a bit, went back to community college. So, yes, let's talk about His parents met while they were studying at Suffolk University Law School. I mean, his parents are lawyers. My parents were not lawyers, Touré. He attended Milton Academy. There's a high school. And then Emory University, but dropped out after his junior year. In 1996, he attended Columbia University's MFA writing program for 1 year. Well, I think it's a year, maybe 2-year program. I love it. The guy went to Emory and he got an MFA at Columbia. I just like this. Like, who's us, dude? Who are you talking about when you say us? All your other privileged friends you went to college with? I mean, God. And again, American history is a series of cycles where white people grow more powerful because of the legalized oppression of black people in America. American history is a series of stories where white people knock us down and stand on our necks, hashtag George Floyd, and then ask us why we're on the ground. It's funny how that, like, I love the thought that white people care. This is always my point when people talk about Republicans being racist. I'm like, no. Republicans just don't give a shit about you. They only care about them. I mean, and selfishly, I don't think that's a bad thing either. I don't think selfish is as terrible of a word as people make it out to be. The dictionary definition probably is bad, but I mean, in terms of just like self-interest, like I love the thought that we're just sitting there leaning over going, why are you on the ground? Like, who are these? They're just like, we're fucking Charlie. They're Charlie Brown running to kick the football. Oh, why you do it? Oh, you're laying on the ground there, buddy. What happened? I don't think that white people do that. I don't think white people have ever done that. I don't think white people care about anybody. I don't think anybody cares about anybody. Fundamentally, they care about things until they don't. And he goes, I really don't care if learning this makes white kids feel bad. And if it doesn't, then they're too heartless. Fuck you. Or they just don't follow your stupid fucking line of thinking, you fucking moron. You college dropout. Oh, who listens to a college dropout? Also this, yes, the teaching of American history can sometimes make people feel bad. Terrible things happen and it's traumatizing. It should never make anyone feel bad unless you did it. This is the problem with framing it as a white versus black or this versus that. If you're a German, you should not feel bad about Nazi Germany. I don't know why a German today should feel bad about that. Unless you were fucking shuffling Jews into cattle cars to be shipped off to Poland, I don't know what did you do? Guilt should only go to the person. You are not responsible for the sins of your father, let alone your great-great-great-grandfather. This is nonsense. So yeah, maybe I'm heartless. I would argue that you're the heartless one because you're fine with telling black kids that they have no hope in this society. And again, by the way, we are through this. He has not gotten to anything she's literally said. He's just on a good rant right now. He was also this. Yes, the teaching of American history can sometimes make people feel bad. Terrible things happen and it's traumatizing. We should not hide the truth from our kids. We should aim to teach them what happened and then together deal with how we feel about it. No, we should not. No, we should not. Because it's not the truth. This is the problem, is he thinks that he's telling the truth. He is telling a belief. He is giving you an opinion. He is giving you an interpretation. It is not the truth. It is an interpretation of what he perceives to be the truth. Because even if the history initially makes you feel bad, that's not enough a reason not to teach it. No one is saying not to teach about racism in American history. Nobody. I don't know one person who has said that we need to stop teaching about segregation. I don't know one person who thinks that. I don't think that. Let's be clear. I do not think we shouldn't teach about racism or segregation or any of that, because those were fundamentally important times in our history. But I also think that we should talk about a lot of things in history that we don't talk about. So to make this all like, it's just, oh, they don't want to teach about racism. This is what they tell white liberals in the suburbs, the fucking rich ones that all voted for Joe Biden and feel bad. They feel good. They feel bad, but they feel morally superior, you know, because they're on the good team and it justifies these are the people who should feel bad. Is the people who are positioning themselves as these moral fucking leaders. So he goes on to say, but even if the history initially makes you feel bad, that's not enough a reason to not teach it. No one is saying not to teach about racism. They just don't want critical race theory to be applied when we're teaching. He goes, I recall many days when I learned about slavery or segregation or Jim Crow or lynchings, days in grade school or in college where I was a black studies major. Yeah, well, again, this guy went to college and he studied a bullshit degree. And this is what he's doing now with his life. Great work. Fucking good job, America. I often walked out of a classroom in a rage thinking about the indignities visited upon my ancestors. What is that? Visited upon how about forced? If you actually believe this, it'd be forced, not visited. You fucking this is what happens when writers are just fucking blowhards. They just come up with about the indignities visited upon my ancestors. But when I calmed down, I realized those lessons had filled me with a sense of purpose, knowing what my people, this motherfucker's parents are lawyers. Knowing what my people have gone through from slavery to the civil rights and black power movements made me feel like I had to do something valuable with my life in order to honor the fights and sacrifices they made. So now he's writing for Yahoo. That's how that resulted. I could feel the shoulders that I was standing up. Oh, God. Oh, God. I could feel the shoulders that I was standing upon to reach up for the life that I had, and I owed it to them to use my life in a way that might honor them and make them proud. He's on the shoulders of slaves and Martin Luther King and Malcolm. He's on their shoulders, man. Oh, God. Could you imagine if you put Touré on MLK's shoulders, MLK would become short. He would shrink in size. That's how pathetic this loser is. So finally he gets to what she says. He goes, on The View, Rice suggests that learning about America's racial history could make black children feel disempowered by race, but it had the exact opposite impact on me. Again, not a direct quote and not what she said. Because again, nobody's saying we should not teach about racial history in the United States. No one is saying that. And that's not what Condoleezza Rice said. And I don't know, are you empowered, dude? Like, you're on fucking Yahoo writing up this opinion piece. How empowered are you? I think that your power probably has more to do with the fact that both your parents were fucking lawyers. I think that might have to do something about your empowerment, bud. This is why he keeps including himself in these people, because he's actually more privileged than most. He came from privilege. This is why every socialist I know comes from privilege. Everybody I know who's talking about privilege and talking about white supremacy, they all come from wealth. Their parents were rich. And that's fine. But don't fucking, this is your way of reconciling your own bullshit. Fuck out of here. You don't fucking know me. Fucking losers. Our classroom should not be, this way he goes, just because the stories are hard to hear does not mean it will damage the listeners. Okay. So again, this is where I love it where they go, they should feel guilty, but it's not going to damage them. Okay. Yeah, what does fucking guilt racking your brain do to you? I wouldn't know. Our classroom should be not another example of white privilege. Again, here's this broad fucking term. They should reflect the ugly reality of American history. I don't what is this for our classroom? Again, he's talking about our class. Why should math and English? Why should all these other things reflect the ugly reality of American history? And this is how he views America. This guy's a multimillionaire. This is how he views America. That it's ugly. There's an ugly reality to our history. What I don't care. What part of history isn't ugly? I don't care. Like, do you not know what the Middle Ages were? The Dark Ages, as they say? Do you not understand that when, Rome would conquer an opposing nation or a land, they would salt the fields so that they can never grow crops there again, thus starving these people? Like, do you not understand? History is filled with monstrosities. I don't know how people think that they can simultaneously understand that the Holocaust happened on another continent, but yet they always bring it back to how America is just like ugly. Again, there were 3 actors in the slave triangle: America, Europe, Africa. That's why it was not Americans getting on ships and stealing black people. It was Africans selling slaves to Americans and Europeans. And by the way, America banned the importation of slaves by 1817, 50 years before the Civil War, or 45 years or whatever before the Civil War. So this is history. You go, it's ugly. Well, yes, humans are ugly. I don't know why this is a complicated concept that, like, if you think that America has perfect history, then you're basically a North Korean who thinks that Kim Jong-il is the descent of God or whatever. I mean, you're delusional. If you have any knowledge of history, you go look at fucking World War I, where guys on both sides were getting mustard gas in the fucking face. And, well, we actually banned that a few years after that because we realized, oh, fuck, we crossed the line. You had men on horseback charging into tanks. You can imagine how that went. He goes, I cannot accept a country that contorts itself to avoid causing white pain. I'm not here to help comfort white people, and Lord knows I am never, ever going to center them. And then he has a nice, beautiful photo of himself. And, the guy's seen a stylist, and he's doing well. And he's got a podcast, so give it a listen. And he's the author of 6 books. America has been very good to Touré. America has been very good to this guy. Too good, I would argue. So I'm glad these are the convoluted lies. And again, so why did I bring this up? Well, Chapelle jumps off the reservation, if you will, the plantation, if you will. And that's what they have to say. Kyrie Irving. Oh, and this is a great. I'll do this one quick because this is a lot shorter, but this is from Deadspin. And so today they put out Kyrie Irving and Dave Chappelle are being used as black pawns on a white chessboard. It's like watching 2 amateurs setting themselves up to fall victim to the Queen's Gambit. I don't know what the fuck. Is that a show? Like, again, this is how I think this is why. Again, these are privileged individuals when you're writing. You're writing for fucking Deadspin about how they're on a pawn. They're pawns on a white chessboard. So I love this part. He goes, Kyrie Irving, and this is written by Karen J. Phillips. It looks like an African-American man. Who's to say? He could be non-binary. Kyrie Irving and Dave Chappelle are getting played. This isn't a battle of free speech or free will, and no matter how some may try to spin it, this isn't a debate on whether or not the government or corporate entities should be allowed to mandate human rights. No, what we're watching is 2 men who falsely believe that their good intentions trump faulty execution, while not realizing that their names and stances are being pimped up by the same people they originally wanted to stand against. That's partially true. Like I said, Ben Shapiro is defending Dave Chappelle. So I guess if you want to call that being pimped by the same people who they originally wanted to stand against, I mean, I guess that's true. It is content. But anywho, on Monday, the Brooklyn Nets defeated the Washington Wizards 104-99. Kevin Durant led all scorers with 25 points, and James Harden chipped in with 14 and a game-high 9 assists. The win put the Nets at 500, as they currently stand at 2-2. As they are trying to still to adjust without Irving on the floor. Okay. And
And, he has a quote from Kevin Durant, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to lose confidence while we're playing. Just kind of generic athlete speak, we got to play. Next man up, blah, blah, blah. And so he goes, like Irving, Wizard star Bradley Beal is an anti-vaxxer, but unlike Irving, he isn't catching as much heat, nor has he willingly become a face of a movement. On Sunday, protesters against vaccine mandates broke through barricades at the Barclays Center, chanting, "Let Kyrie play." It was a disturbing scene for many reasons, but mainly because it was very reminiscent of what we saw take place on January 6th. What was that, by the way? They can't use the word because they know it's not an insurrection. No one's getting charged with that. They're all being charged with fucking trespassing, which, by the way, is like legal in fucking Democrat states and cities. You could just trespass now. You can camp on the sidewalks. Like, so this is like, it's so funny. What is it? It's very reminiscent of what we saw. Like, did you not watch Antifa and BLM just burn the fucking country down over the summer? It's so funny how they always zero in on one riot, even if it's even that, but they don't talk about, the ones that were repeated and taking place all fucking year. And they act like we don't remember that. This is how I know. This isn't for me. These articles are not for people like me and perhaps people like you, but it's certainly for people who do not fucking pay attention and only get their news from one source. And he goes, Sunday was also the same day that Rolling Stone dropped an exclusive report on how some of the white homegrown terrorists that stormed the Capitol revealed they had participated in dozens of planning meetings with members of Congress and White House staff as promises of blanket pardons were made from the Oval Office. By the way, the Rolling Stone, that was not a fucking new, they repackaged some old news. So it's not fucking, that's not related. I love how they just, this is what stupid people, this is what you do when you're a manipulator of words. Again, it's the same way that Touré starts talking about white people and then goes right into white children. What is this? Like, he just tied all of this into January 6th. Like, he tied it all into that, which has nothing to do with Kyrie. And then he goes on to say this. Irving, the man that has been more than generous with his time and money by donating to the WNBA, his Native American people, to the hungry, and even bought a house for George Floyd's family, is now being used as a puppet by the same crowd that doesn't give a damn about his black life. First off, this dude has never bought a house for anybody. I guarantee you that. Kyrie bought George Floyd's family a house, and it's like, oh, well, that's nice, but he's being used as a puppet now. And he's being a gullible, as what he goes. I love it. You could just trash a guy. The guy's donating to the WNBA. Why? I don't know why they do that. That's a fucking joke league. His Native American people, yeah, that matters. To the hungry, oh, that's nice. And even bought a house for George Floyd's family, but is now being used as a puppet by the same crowd that doesn't give a damn about his black life. I mean, it's just so funny. Again, he's making as if this is all based on the only reason you can believe this is if you don't realize that black Americans are like the least vaccinated group in America right now. It's the only way that you can actually buy any of this article right now so far. Because if he's making it about like, oh, well, Ben Shapiro's defending him or whatever, like that's sort of what I think. It's like, oh, these conservatives, these Trumpians. Yeah, all those blacks storming the White House. That's what happened. Sorry, the Capitol, not the White House. God. This is what happens when you think you're always the smartest person in the room, when you're actually just a narcissist that surrounds himself with idiots. I love that he is making that proclamation. I love that. This is what calling him thinks you're the smartest person in the room when you're actually just a narcissist that surrounds himself with idiots. God damn. I love that they fucking that's a brilliant line. Like this guy, he just lists all this shit that Kyrie has done in his generosity, and then he goes on to say you think you're the smartest person in the room, and you're actually just a narcissist, and you're surrounded with idiots. I mean, God. To us, you're a contrarian without a cause. To them, you're a global pawn. I love that. Like, who is this us? Again, this is the us, the we. Huh? Like, who's us, dude? Do you have a mouse in your pocket? Where is that coming from? Just a gullible pawn. And I can't wait to see like ties Dave Chappelle into this. Also on Monday, Dave Chappelle proved that he is forever fallen. He's irredeemable. He is forever fallen down the same hole that Irving has when he released a video on Instagram which he once again dug into his I love how he quotes it as he dug into his stance. Like, it's not a real position. I love how it's like, oh, that's not real. That's not a real thing. That's not a real position. It's a fake position. He's lying. His alleged stance. As he keeps trying to play the victim due to the controversy in his latest stand-up, he's trying to play the victim. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. Isn't it funny when we talk about Black America and we're talking about victim culture and you go, oh, I don't think you're being racist. And then this guy just calls him a victim. That's interesting. Controversy in his latest stand special, The Closer, is caused at Netflix and within the LGBTQ community. By the way, I don't think anyone gives a fuck about this except the activist. I don't think any trans people care about this. I don't think any gays, lesbians, bis, queers, because that's what the Q stands for. I don't think any of those people give a fuck except the activist left. That's it. Because of his continued harmful jokes against harmful jokes. You have to prove how jokes are harmful, by the way. I've never once had anyone been able to prove that a joke was harmful. Earlier this month, Netflix suspended a trans employee that publicly spoke out against Chapelle. That's not why they suspended that person, by the way. There's more to that story. I want everyone in this audience to know, quote, this is a quote from Chapelle. I want everyone to know in this audience that even though the media frames it that it's me versus the community, that is not what this is. Do not blame the LGBTQ. Oh, because I love how so, in journalists, they'll put SIC next to things that are misspelled, but they don't correct it. So he goes, do not blame the LBGTQ sick community for any of this shit. That's so, I love it because there's the right way to the right way to say it's LGBTQ. Like, you have to say it this way. And it's like, okay. Like, it's so funny. These fucking hacks. He goes, this has nothing to do with them. It's about corporate interests and what I can say and what I cannot say. For the record, and I need you to know this, everyone I know from the community has been loving and supporting, so I don't know what all this nonsense is about. Yeah, you pissed off the left. That's what happened, Dave. That's what fucking happened. You pissed off the Democrats. That's it. You fucked up their narrative. So yeah, that's why they're mad. I don't think any gay people care about this. I don't think any trans people care about this. I think this is entirely a manufactured event. He then followed up by saying this, to the transgender community, I am more than willing to give you an audience, but you will not summon me. I am not bending to anybody's demands. I love it. So he breaks away from what Chapelle actually says as part of his demands. I'll read the rest of this. I don't think it doesn't look like he says it. He goes, this is what happens when you see yourself as the leader of a genre, comedy, during a time in which most of your colleagues feel like they're the only ones that shouldn't be required to evolve. Fuck off. How about this? I love it. They're showing their hand. He's saying everyone should be required to evolve. And these fucking comedians just don't get it. Yeah, maybe you're not actually evolving, bud. You're not evolving. You think you're evolving, you're not evolving. You have replaced your brain with the corporate media. You have submitted your brain to corporate narratives. So you want to talk about evolved, bud, you are the least evolved. To us, you're a contrarian with a flawed and outdated cause. To them, you're an easily manipulated pawn. I love it. Outdated cause. His whole special is that Black America is oppressed, actively being oppressed in the United States, and that the trans community effectively is cutting in line. That's really how you could boil that down. And there's more to it than that, but that's basically it. And so in this guy's mind, Dave Chappelle is a contrarian with a flawed and outdated cause. Okay. To them, you're an easily manipulated pawn. He's getting paid $20 million a fucking special, I believe. Or maybe it was $20 million for all of his specials. I don't know. Some ungodly amount of money. Dave Chappelle's not a pawn. You can say what you will about him. I went on him. I made my thoughts very clear there. He's not a pawn. Barack Obama, there's a pawn. Dave Chappelle, not a pawn. Mitt Romney, there's a pawn. Chappelle, not a pawn. This is the part where I love it. He puts this in parentheses. This is the part where I remind you that even Eddie Murphy said that he cringes at some of his old jokes. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Murphy revealed in 2019. Eddie Murphy had way more intense jokes about homosexuals than what Dave Chappelle was doing there. If you cannot see a difference between those two jokes, I can't help you. And by the way, Eddie Murphy stopped doing stand-up for 20-something years because of whatever, his anxiety or something. I don't even remember his reasoning, but he basically walked away from stand-up. Fair enough. But I don't know. Is that a guy who it's like the guy didn't work on his craft. He went off and did a bunch of shit movies. So it's like he cringes at every comic should cringe at their old jokes. Eddie Murphy skyrocketed to fame when he was 22 and then was never able to reaccomplish that. And that's not a knock on him. It's just that's not uncommon with, we see this with child stars, right? They get really big, really famous, really early. And then they don't really ever do it. They don't have a sustainable acting career, or their music doesn't quite hold up as they get older because they got it all too early, too often. I think Eddie Murphy was as a stand-up, he was definitely one of those guys. So yeah, his stand-up didn't evolve. If he had kept at it, or maybe if he had all those jokes and it was the stand-up special wasn't the biggest fucking special like ever at its time, then maybe, if he just has like a normal path for a comic, he's not telling those cringy jokes because he has grown as a comic and as a person. That's the process. So, yeah, even Eddie Murphy. Well, Eddie's not Dave. Let's be clear. And then he goes on to say, at this point, I'm unbothered by those who agree or disagree with Irving and Chapelle. That's not true. That's really not true. I'm unbothered. Well, you wrote all this. That's definitely not true, bud. Because we've reached a moment where you're steadfast on what side you stand on when it comes to them. Right now, this isn't about who's making good points or raging against the machine. It's about willingly falling victim to a crowd of people who would never do the same for you. As Irving and Chapelle's narcissism has left them blind to the fact that they have become puppets in a real-time minstrel show. And the hands that are pulling those strings are white. God. How is this not racist? This is, to me, no different than any fucking segregationist in the 1950s. I don't understand why people don't get this. They make it about power. That's a very flawed. If you want to put all your, history will judge me correctly because racism is about power. I mean, it's amazing. So and again, if you're not bothered by people that agree, you wouldn't write this whole. Of course, you're bothered by it. That's why you wrote the fucking thing. Of course, I'm bothered by you. That's why I'm talking about it, you idiot. And this is great. It's about willingly falling victim to a crowd of people who never do the same for you. They veered off the plantation once and you wrote this. What does that say about you? Because if you would have said, hey, I disagree with them, but Kyrie's done all this great stuff. He bought George Floyd's family a house. He's supported Native Americans. He's fed the hungry. He's donated to the WNBA. Chapelle, I don't agree with him on this, but his work, he's taken on the issue of race head on fearlessly. The guy walked away from millions of dollars because he didn't want to have his hands tied. But I disagree with him. You could say that. You can say, hey, Kyrie, I love everything you do. I just want you to get vaccinated, bud. You could be that way. I would disagree with you, but I go, okay. But this is, again, he called Kyrie Irving. Sorry, let me reread this. He said, This is what happens when you think you're the smartest person in the room and when you're actually just a narcissist that surrounds himself with idiots. He's called both of these men, these black men, pawns, and he said that Kyrie is a narcissist that surrounds himself with idiots and a gullible pawn. So this guy ventures off. This guy does not want to get Kyrie doesn't want to get vaccinated. And he said, I'm not going to get vaccinated, and I'm doing this because I'm not, because I can take this risk, and I'm speaking for a lot of people, and I don't think that people should be forced to do medical procedures. That is a rational opinion. If you make that about something that's not, then you're a fucking idiot or you're a liar. And I think in this case, this guy's a liar. That's why he keeps going, us, us, us. Who's us? So it's just, and then he accuses them being in a real-time minstrel show. I mean, for fuck's sake. Excuse me, why do we listen to these absolute morons? To compare that to a minstrel show? Fuck out of here. He goes on to say, I mean, look at who's, again, supporting. He uses that in quotations like their stance isn't real and these people aren't really supporting them. That's so fucking great. For Irving, the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Clay Travis, Laverne Spencer. I don't know who the fuck is Laverne Spencer. I don't really love it when they tell me about the crazy people on my team. Oh, well, what about Laverne Spencer? Who? I've literally never read those two words together in my entire life. Maybe I'm stupid. I don't think that's the case. But look who's supporting them. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Clay Travis. Oh, God, not Clay Travis. Laverne Spencer, Donald Trump Jr., and Ted Cruz. Individuals that have proven through their words, actions, and legislation that they don't care about black people, especially the ones that dribble a basketball for a living. Yeah, shut up and dribble, right? I mean... Yeah, I love it. Clay Travis covers fucking sports and he talks all about betting and football and baseball. He talks about sports. I don't like this notion he doesn't care about black people. Donald Trump, none of these people, I don't know Laverne Spencer, so I can't speak. None of these people have done anything in legislation that would, or actions or words that would say they don't care about black people. So fuck out of here. For Chapelle, comedians like Joe Rogan, Louis C.K., and Jon Stewart have all supported him in some form. White men that have a history of crossing the line when it comes to saying and doing insensitive things towards black people and women, and either come off as progressive commentators when it's convenient. Kyrie Irving can't see the back screen coming. Dave Chappelle doesn't realize he's a punchline. Who's the pawn now? You are, bitch. You're writing for Deadspin, one of the worst publications in history, and you're going after these guys. Fuck out of here. By the way, I love how you would think that he says Joe Rogan, Louis C.K., and Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart has been carrying water for the Democratic Party his entire fucking career. Jon Stewart had a whole show devoting to promoting progressive values. He crate trained a generation of idiot fucking morons into thinking that what he was saying was the news. These are the same idiots who continue to watch Trevor Noah. I don't get it. And that's the thing. Jon Stewart is now oh, well, doesn't matter. Fuck you. It's like this. I know this is somebody, I'll be vague, but it's people I know in real life where, these, the one family member is white, the others are not. And the white woman has voted for Democrats her entire life, hates Donald Trump, full blown blah 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 blah, and helps these people. And then they're just like, whenever she does something wrong, it's like, oh, would you do it this way if we were white? And it's like, it doesn't matter. This is why you should never, Jon Stewart, Louis, Joe, all of you, never cave to these people. Dave, this is the lesson here. It doesn't matter about your entire life's work. The moment you get out of their fucking box they have you in, off the plantation, Jon Stewart's on this plantation too. So that's not racist, gang. But the moment you do that, the moment you step outside, they go, oh, Yeah, well, you're dead to us. You're a pawn. Fuck your entire life's work. You're a pawn. I mean, this is what they do. So, let's see here. I've covered that. I've been going an hour 45. I have 3 more things that I want to talk about. Nah, I'll save it. It's been a long show. Listen, guys, you've been great. Thanks for participating. I appreciate it. Keep challenging these morons. This is what we need. We need to stop listening to these people. We need to mock them. That's what I aim to do in this show, is to mock these liars and these losers. They're pathetic, really. So, yeah, I appreciate it. I didn't know I was going to go an hour 45 on Chapelle. I still got to talk about Alec Baldwin, John Gruden. I have other things, but we'll save it for, I'm going to try and record again here in a couple days. So we'll save it for that. Until then, I appreciate you all listening. Thank you for the Seventh Heaven listening to the Seventh Heaven podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Seventh Evan. You can find the show everywhere, and we're going to try and get this motherfucker online here shortly. So appreciate it. God bless. God bless the United States of America.